800,000 years later, Earth is in ruins. Humans have turned into savages, while underground, mutants rule, feeding on fear and flesh. Year 1899. Alexander Hartigan is a professor at Columbia University in bustling New York City, teaching applied mechanics and engineering. Deeply in love with science, he often forgets everything else around him. His best friend, David Philby, constantly reminds him that he has a date that evening with his beloved Emma, where Alexander plans to nervously propose. Rushing home, the professor is met by his housekeeper, Mrs. Watchett, a demanding woman who insists he quickly change into clean clothes free of chalk dust. Alexander is a visionary scientist with bold forward-thinking ideas about the future, but David doesn't share his optimism. He's wary of machines and self-expression, and even more concerned about Alexander's growing friendship with the brooding eccentric, Einstein. David believes Einstein is a fraud and urgently urges Alexander to stay away, but the professor is genuinely inspired by his radical ideas and even offers Albert helpful advice. On his way to Central Park, Alexander suddenly remembers his promise to buy Emma flowers, but quickly forgets again when he spots one of the first gleaming automobiles. Regaining focus, he hurries to the ice rink, where he warmly meets Emma and invites her for a quiet walk down the shadowy alley. There, he confesses his deep love and proposes, offering her a beautiful engagement ring. Their joyful moment is shattered by a thief hiding nearby with a revolver. Alexander tries to avoid trouble by handing over his wallet, gloves, and pocket watch, but the desperate thief demands Emma's ring. Desperate to protect it, Alexander lunges at him. In the violent struggle, the thief accidentally fires the gun. He flees, leaving Emma dying in Alexander's arms. 4 years later, grief-stricken and consumed by unbearable guilt, Alexander isolates himself completely in his cluttered lab, cutting off all contact with the outside world. Mrs. Watchett announces the unexpected arrival of David, but the emotionally broken scientist stubbornly refuses to see anyone. David insists, trying desperately to bring his friend back to reality. He believes Alexander wasn't responsible for Emma's tragic death, but the professor firmly disagrees. He blames no one but himself, knowing he failed to protect the woman he truly loved. Pushing David firmly away, Alexander tells him to come back in a week. But to the professor, that's just a hollow excuse, because in a week, this painful conversation, and even the memory of it, may no longer exist. Over those long 4 years, Alexander has been secretly working on something hidden behind a heavy curtain, a time machine. Cleaned up and determined, he takes the precious watch Emma gave him and a small locket with her photo. He uses the time machine to travel from 1903 back to 1899, with one desperate goal, saving Emma. Reappearing in the park near the ice rink, he waits patiently for her. This time, he's not late, not because of better timing, but because he's been waiting for this moment silently for 4 years. When he sees Emma alive, he runs to her, embraces her tightly, and kisses her passionately in public, unbothered by what anyone else thinks. Alexander tells Emma they urgently need to have a serious talk, but avoids walking down the familiar park path, knowing the mugger is hiding somewhere behind the trees. Instead, he quickly leads her out to the busy street and hires a carriage to take them downtown. He can't explain his strange behavior or seemingly irrational decisions, but he assures Emma that he loves her deeply and wants to be with her, and only her. Fearing a temporal paradox, and the terrifying possibility of running into his past self, Alexander asks her to return home and wait for his visit. Before letting her go, the scientist decides to keep his promise and buy her a beautiful bouquet of flowers. But as soon as he steps into the flower shop, something terrible suddenly happens outside. The same early automobile that once caught his attention spins out of control, crashing violently into an overturned cart. Rushing out into the street, Alexander sees that Emma has been caught in the horrific accident. Once again, he is forced to watch her die, this time in a different, cruel way. The second crushing failure makes one thing painfully clear: the past cannot be changed, and Emma's death is inevitable. Hoping to understand why the past is unchangeable, Alexander decides to bravely travel into the unknown future. Back in his greenhouse lab, he carefully activates the time machine again, watching the world around him rapidly transform. At one point, the cherished locket with Emma's photo is accidentally thrown outside the time field. In an instant, the delicate image inside decays and vanishes into the distant past. Soon after, he notices a glowing neon sign: "The future is now." Believing he might finally find real answers, Alexander confidently stops the machine on May 24, 2030. In this unfamiliar future, he meets advanced citizens who openly scoff at his outdated clothes and awkward behavior. Determined to find meaningful insight, he heads quickly to a large museum. Along the way, he learns that humanity is planning its first permanent colony on the moon, using a series of powerful thermonuclear explosions to carefully carve tunnels deep into its surface. While searching for relevant books, Alexander is unexpectedly greeted by a mysterious man. During their intense conversation, he realizes the man is Vox, an advanced AI that serves as a knowledgeable guide to humanity's vast collective knowledge. Alexander eagerly asks about the practical science of time travel, but Vox dismisses the idea as pure fiction, a persistent myth from old books and popular movies. Disappointed and frustrated, Alexander realizes time travel never advanced beyond the realm of fantasy. Here, he also unexpectedly discovers that people in the distant future believe he was a mad scientist who mysteriously disappeared in 1903. Realizing that traveling to the year 2030 brought no meaningful results, Alexander decides to continue his perilous journey even further into the future. As soon as he activates the time machine, a powerful jolt violently shakes the lab. Something catastrophic has clearly occurred. He abruptly halts the machine on August 26, 2037, only to find a devastated New York City, its once bustling streets now engulfed in chaos and roaring fire. There, he's quickly discovered by police officers who try to arrest him for violating curfew. Desperate, Alexander begs them to explain what happened and learns that the thermonuclear explosions used to construct the lunar colony caused the moon to shift dangerously out of orbit, and ultimately shatter into fragments. As another violent earthquake hits, the officers abandon him and run for their lives. Alexander rushes back to the time machine and frantically attempts to escape. But as the ground shakes again, he accidentally strikes his head hard on part of the complex mechanism and loses consciousness. His body collapses heavily against the lever, accidentally pushing it to its furthest position. The machine rockets forward uncontrollably, hurtling Alexander into the distant and unknown future. He regains consciousness for only a brief moment, just enough to stop the machine when the dial ominously reads July 16, 800 2701, before passing out again. He is discovered by unknown people, who cautiously care for him until his injuries slowly begin to heal. Waking early one quiet morning, Alexander has no idea where, or when, he truly is. He spots a curious young boy who reacts with obvious surprise upon hearing English. Alexander tries to speak with him, but the boy suddenly runs off. Following him, the scientist finds himself in a fragile cliffside hut that clings precariously to the rock face like a swallow's nest. Below, nestled in a deep canyon, is an entire settlement of similar homes. The people here live simply by fishing and hunting. Word spreads quickly that Alexander is awake, and the distant descendants of humankind gather eagerly to learn who he is and where he came from. He learns that in this far-off future, the English language has completely died out. The locals now refer to it as the stone language, preserved only on fragile fragments of ancient granite tablets. The only person who still speaks it fluently is Mara, a patient teacher who passes it on to curious children. Mara tells him that their people are called the Eloi, humans whose appearance has subtly diverged from what Alexander recognizes, with darker skin and more delicate, almost fragile features. They are clearly puzzled by his pale complexion. The respected leader of the community, Torin, asks Mara to find out who he really is. Alexander explains that he comes from the distant past, but Mara tells the others he must have hit his head and is simply delusional. Their serious conversation is interrupted by a loud, echoing signal marking the swift arrival of night. The Eloi begin to quietly retreat into their simple huts, and Mara gently guides Alexander back to his small bed. She and her younger brother, Kalen, lost their parents long ago, but they still live with quiet hope and resilience. Curious and eager to learn, Kalen quickly forms a genuine bond with Alexander, who gives the boy his treasured pocket watch. As he talks late into the evening with Mara, Alexander realizes that she does truly believe his story about time travel. She's clearly far more intelligent and perceptive than the rest of her people. That night, Alexander sleeps poorly. He is haunted by a vivid nightmare of trekking through dense jungle, only to come face to face with a large, grotesque head. Upon waking, he's shocked to learn that his watch has been stolen, and that the same nightmare visited all the Eloi as well. The next morning, Mara shows Alexander the ancient stones engraved with English words and carefully explains that studying this dead language is a sacred tradition passed down for countless generations. When asked why there are no elderly people in the village, she quietly avoids the question, saying only that they are gone, and that the Eloi build windmills to honor and remember their ancestors. Eventually, the two make their way across the land in search of the time machine. When they find it, it's badly damaged from traveling through time, but Alexander is confident he can still use it to return to the past. Mara begs him to take her little brother with him, saying the boy would be safer in Alexander's time than here. Confused by her urgency, Alexander begins to question her meaning, just as a loud alarm pierces the air, sending a wave of fear across Mara's face. Hearing her younger brother scream, she rushes to Kalen, while Alexander realizes the local villagers are under attack. Moments later, he sees it, a Morlock, pale, ape-like, and monstrous, a creature that hunts humans. To mark their next victim, the Morlocks shoot darts filled with a sticky, foul-smelling liquid. The villagers desperately try to flee back to the boats, but hidden in the sand, more hunters silently lie in wait. They suddenly ambush the people, surrounding them quickly and snatching them one by one. When Alexander sees Kalen struck by a sharp dart and marked as prey, he knows he has to act immediately. One of the Morlocks begins the chase, but Alexander cleverly distracts the monster, drawing it toward himself. He's not strong, but his agility and quick thinking give him an unexpected edge. Just as things start to go badly, Kalen bravely comes to his rescue, scaring the Morlock off with fire. Together, they manage to save each other, but several villagers are dragged away into the sand, including Mara. Alexander searches desperately for her, but the creatures vanish without a trace, as if swallowed by the earth itself. Strangely, the others seem disturbingly calm and resigned. That's when Terrain explains, this is just how life is now. They've accepted the losses, learned to ignore the monsters, and live with the terrible knowledge that people are taken like livestock. Terrain believes the survivors should feel lucky and simply move on, but Alexander can't accept that. He desperately pleads for any clue that might lead him to Mara. Kaelin finally tells him about a ghost said to live nearby in the dense forest. That night, Alexander and Kaelin cautiously venture into a dark cave where they unexpectedly meet Vox, a slightly mad, lonely being. The books around him have long since turned to dust, but the ancient computer still remembers everything, even Alexander. Vox realizes now that Alexander wasn't crazy, his talk of time machines was real and possible. The computer hasn't had access to current data in ages, but one day, an Aloy escaped the Morlocks and ended up in the cave. From him, Vox learned the grim truth. After a global apocalypse linked to the moon, humanity split into two. Some survived above ground, others went below. Over time, the Morlocks mutated grotesquely without sunlight, and eventually began hunting the surface dwellers as food. Vox doesn't know the exact location of their lair, but he cautiously suggests heading east, following the sounds of their eerie, ragged breathing. Taking Vox's advice, Alexander and Kaelin silently travel into the dense jungle. Soon, they come upon a massive stone head, the very same one haunting their nightmares. Leaving the boy above, Alexander descends alone into the enemy's dark den. There, he finds Mara's tattered clothes and personal items, along with cruel hooks and chains used for butchering victims. While exploring, Alexander accidentally pulls a rusted lever and tumbles violently into a pit filled with blood and human bones. One of the hunters quickly finds him there and takes him prisoner, dragging him into a dimly lit underground chamber. As he looks around, Alexander spots Mara, sitting silently in a cold cage. She doesn't even seem to notice him, but more disturbing is the monstrous creature seated on a makeshift throne. It turned out that Alexander had come face to face with the chief Morlock, a pale-skinned creature far more human-like than the other Morlocks. The ape-like beings were his servants and hunters, completely under his control through telepathy. The leader of this underground society explained how the Morlocks and Aloy came to be and revealed that he could control the minds of all humans living on the planet. Morlocks live in a caste system, where each monster type is a distinct biological species. The ruling caste, the super-intelligent telepaths, see the Aloy as eternally frightened prey who have accepted their place in the food chain. Prisoners like Mara can survive but are used for breeding to create new colonies. Morlocks are much smarter, with a developed industry, and their appearance is the result of humans evolving underground over hundreds of thousands of years. Alexander finds all this wrong and immoral, but the chief Morlock forbids him from judging their way of life. He says the Morlocks don't know how humanity survived these 800,000 years and have no right to decide what's right or wrong. To show Alexander that he's far from perfect himself, the chief uses his telepathic powers. He not only reveals his knowledge of the past but also creates an illusion where Alexander sees Emma and their children. Alexander realizes he wouldn't have built a time machine if he'd had a happy family and a beloved wife. The chief explains why Alexander can't change the past or save Emma. Her death is what forced him to take these steps in the first place. This creates a temporary paradox, making it impossible for Alexander to save her. The chief returns Alexander's time machine, which his servants had moved and hidden underground. Having received the answer he sought, Alexander agrees to return to 1903, leaving the future as it is. He asks for his pocket watch back but uses the request as a distraction. As the machine starts up, Alexander grabs the chief Morlock and drags him inside. A fight breaks out, but Alexander tricks his opponent, causing him to fall outside the machine's temporal field. Pulling the lever all the way, Alexander watches the chief rapidly age, rot, and crumble to dust within seconds. Stopping the machine in the year 635,427,810, Alexander finds a bleak, desolate landscape. Towering Morlock spires dominate the horizon, and groups of chained humans are led to slaughter. Evolution and humanity's history have long since ended. There's no hope left for a brighter future. Realizing this is hell on Earth, Alexander comes to a surprising conclusion. While he can't change the past, he can change the future. Determined, he returns to the year 800-2701. Freeing Mara from her cage, Alexander uses his pocket watch to short-circuit the time machine's mechanism. Several Morlocks try to capture them but are blinded by a burst of light, allowing the pair to lock the monsters away. Alexander and Mara escape as the creatures give chase. Soon, Terrain and his people arrive, having decided to fight back. The community leader offers Alexander a hand, helping him out of the trap moments before an explosion. The destruction of the time machine triggers a chain reaction that reduces the entire underground lair, and the Morlocks within it, to dust. With the time machine gone for good, Alexander is now permanently stuck in the present. But that doesn't scare him. He's found what he was truly searching for: love. Starting a new life with Mara, Alexander uses the knowledge stored in Vox's computer to try and rebuild civilization. Vox becomes a teacher for the children, sharing classic literature with the local tribe. This gives everyone a real chance at a brand new future, one that Alexander is determined to create. At the same time, he takes Mara and Kaelin to a clearing where his old lab once stood, the very place where he built the time machine. With deep reverence, Alexander walks them through every detail, recalling the past with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. It was exactly here, back in 1903, that David and the housekeeper, Mrs. Watchett, had been. They worried about Alexander's sudden disappearance but truly believed, and hoped, that he was happy, wherever he ended up. If you could go back and change the past, how many lives would you be willing to risk to save just one? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below, smash that like button, and make sure to subscribe. Catch you in the next video.